Hello and welcome back to the Endeavors AI podcast. I'm Collin McKee, founder of Endeavors AI, where we help operators invest and investors buy back their time by creating workflows, agents, and automations. Today's conversation is about something very real happening right now. AI is compressing firms, stress testing regulation, and forcing capital markets to rethink how work actually gets done. My guest today, David Traylor, is managing partner of Golden Eagle Partners, one of the first investment banks operating in cannabis and psychedelics, and someone who's been using AI in regulated markets long before it was fashionable. David, hello, and thank you for joining.
Colin, thanks for having us. Thanks everybody for joining. Hopefully, we'll find this to be a very interactive and informative conversation.
Indeed. So, David, you said something that really stands out to me that firms that need 20, 30, or even 40 people can now operate with just a few senior operators. Let's start there. Why does AI enable elite firms to operate with dramatically fewer people?
Well, I mean, the one thing just to clarify on that, Colin, and I saw this, going back a couple of years, because my firm, Golden Eagle Partners, were, as you mentioned, one of the first investment bank in North America to do cannabis, pretty much internationally, 12 years and 10 years, respectively. And we've definitely been leveraging technology, CRMs, AI for a number of years. So yeah, I think and we saw that coming that, because a lot of the stuff like let's just take finance. You have a lot of data crunching, a lot of analytics, and that's where you have a lot of peons, working 80, 100-hour weeks. And sorry, put it that way, but the analysts, I was one too. Everybody pays their dues.
Then you're allowed.
Yeah. But I think the one thing, the caveat is I think AI is not going to replace everything. There are some people that are not going to be replaced. And you're going to need people how to translate this technology. Simple. And so I think a lot of people look at this like, oh my God, like you mentioned, having just senior people. I don't really think that's going to happen. I think you're still going to have the senior people that need to strategize, that have the relationships. That's one thing that I don't think AI is going to take away right now. But I think to put it succinctly and simply, I think that we're going to need people to understand how to apply this technology. It's going to be needed badly.
Agreed. Yep. Yep. Someone's gotta have the leash on it, right? And walk it down its paths. So in tune with that, as you see the compression and you kind of already touched on it, roles are shrinking, and they're using this for research and early diligence. What are the things, if there are any other responsibilities that you could think of that definitely won't be able to be doled out to an AI workflow? It's still going to need the human judgment.
I mean, great question, Colin. I mean, one of the other thing I was thinking about too, though, is like, so as I mentioned to you, I work in cannabis and psychedelics, which over the last 3 or 4 years has been very tough. And you get a lot of people. I've been on stage 45 plus times around the world talking about those sectors. And a lot of times in the last couple of years been so hard. You have people always saying, "Oh my God, glass is half full," and so negative. I think the one positive thing about this is you said in one of the notes that the roles will disappear. I think roles are gonna appear, right? There are gonna be new roles that have not been there before. And so people need to think in that realm. But also getting to your question, I think it's hard to figure that out, I think, right now. But yeah, as I mentioned, a lot of the analytics, for example, one of the things that I've been doing to my daughter who's in CU leads is the fact of how to try to make sure you learn this and learn it right and learn it as not a way to cheat or plagiarize somebody, but learn how a way to use it where you're referencing data because it's a great accumulator, right? And that's the way I use it is I essentially say, okay, provide me information on natural compounds and reference data. Please provide reference data. So it's not just a bunch of garbage because, as you guys know, garbage in, garbage out. But to answer your question succinctly, I think that the two main parts where we build our business both on Golden Eagle Partners and Skunkworks Nature are two things: relationships. So you can certainly, I think, will over time be able to apply machine learning and AI to enhance how you do those, no doubt about it. But I think it's hard to replace the one-on-one. We notice how with the pandemic, right? The one-on-one interaction, and then also expertise. I mean, again, you can use AI to enhance your expertise, but I don't think it's going to be a full-on substitute.
Cool. And that segues well to my follow up. Where does where does the over adoption of AI become dangerous in finance? Like, where is the point where it starts to break trust and a firm is actually doing themselves a disservice for
Well,
using too much automation?
it's going to be interesting, Colin. And again, the one thing that people need to realize when you're a financial professional in the US, you need to take a test, you need to pass, you need to do continuing ed, being a registered rep. And that also puts pressure on the fact that, we always have to keep diligence files. We've been, had talked to people with FINRA with a part of a typical audit. We pass with flying colors. And it's because we work in these industries like cannabis, psychedelics, where we apply high stringency, and I think that's what people are going to have to do. They're not going to have, I think what the problem's going to be is you're going to have people leaning on AI, machine learning as a crutch, and essentially, just accumulating data. They're not going to probably back check it or cross check it. And then that can get themselves into trouble because that's what does happen in financial markets when, you would essentially say you've done the diligence and you use AI and it doesn't pick up some of the nuances that maybe a person could do in their analytics and analysis. So I think that's, it's hard to in 25 minutes to really discuss all that, but I think that's one good example.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. So moving more specifically into your firm and what you guys are operating within, which is cannabis and psychedelics, and something that's very heavily regulated. Why are these some of the hardest environments in the world to operate in? Because you're kind of in a niche that there's very few people in that pool, right? And there's probably a reason because it is so difficult. Tell us why it's so hard to.
Yeah, I mean, real quickly, and we could spend the whole 25 minutes on this, but the thing is that these things, there's really real interesting things going on in the 50s, 1950s in Maryland with psychedelics and research. And then all of a sudden you had Timothy Leary and some of these people. And I like Timothy Leary, but some of these people came to abuse it in the 60s. And then, certainly had the countercultural movement. And then you had, Nixon and, a lot of the politicians come in and say all that, counterculture is bad. And psychedelics got lumped into that. And cannabis has been the same way, marijuana. Uh, Most people in my industry don't call it that. But there's a lot of reasons. Mainly, there's still a lot of stigma. There's a lot of misunderstanding. A lot of people still look at these things as bad, right? And that's one of the things that we've been trying to do with DEA and rescheduling is the fact that Schedule One compounds are predisposed to addiction and have no medical benefit. And that is not true for psychedelics, and that's not true for cannabis having no medical benefit. They do have specific medical benefits. So you have that stigma, misinformation, and preconceived ideas around the world. And we're slowly trying to break that down. But the problem is, too, to mention to you, is, and getting back to the finance, investors invest in what they know. And the problem is that a lot of investors back in the last 5 years looked at, cannabis and psychedelics and thought that, oh, here's a new sector. Here's a lot of money to be made. They didn't really understand the nuances. They put a lot of money into it. And frankly, a lot of the early actors and the management teams in cannabis and psychedelic companies were not that good on the flip side. And so you had, bad money or even good money being put into companies. And pretty much the amount of money that's been vaporized in both sectors has now caused a problem because then you have a lot of people just say, I'm not going to touch that again. So that's a quick summation.
Yep, yep. Fool me once, right? Or even
Yeah,
twice.
totally.
Yep. So has there been a way, to kind of be team AI that automations or just machine learning has been helpful in navigating, say, the misinformation or the compliance aspect, any of the heavy research portions of investing in the cannabis and psychedelic
I,
industry?
no, not yet. I mean, I think the one thing about AI, and again, it depends on what kind of, machine learning you're talking about and how it gets applied. I mean, certainly people are looking at developing new drugs, right? Using it. So kind of extrapolating what's been done in the past to maybe, so you don't have to do the experiments.
Hmm.
And so that might be possible. The problem with cannabis and psychedelics is we don't have uh, the science and the data and the information, the clinical trial information behind those sectors like we do with a lot of biotech, like monoclonal antibodies, et cetera.
Hmm.
And so we're going to have to generate that data. So again, garbage in, garbage out. We need more stringent, high quality data for both these sectors. And I think over time when that happens and also applying AI to grow with these sectors, I mean, we're using a lot right now to figure out which areas are blind spots for a lot of these natural compounds. Like, for example, real quick, alkaloids are a fascinating compound class. We're using AI to find out, which alkaloids have been applied in the past. And real quickly, caffeine's an alkaloid, nicotine's an alkaloid, cocaine's an alkaloid, and also ibogaine and psilocybin are alkaloids. So you have this really amazing menagerie of natural compounds which we could use to generate better treatments and wellness. And we could certainly use AI to do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, just a quick pause to our viewership. If you're enjoying the conversation, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any topics that you'd like to have discussed or any views of your own that you'd like to share, feel free to comment. We take a look at those and really value any kind of insights from the viewership. So, and again, thanks for watching. Back to David. David, when you spent time, well, let me just pause and let you talk a little bit more about what we talked about in the pre-call, which was Skunkworks Nature AI. This is really interesting. I'd like to have you explain it because I don't think I'll do as good of a job.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I will either. But so essentially getting back, excuse me, to got a little cold. I'm trying to get over. As I mentioned, we've been doing investment banking and finance for over 12 years in cannabis. And again, cannabis being marijuana and hemp, this whole amazing natural plant. And it's been tough, as we just mentioned, for a number of reasons. Ones I included and didn't include. And so we've been going out over the last 3 or 4 years to a lot of big companies, and you know the names. I mean, there's beverage, there's alcohol, there's big tobacco, there's pharma, there's wellness. You name it, we probably talk to the company. And we know that these companies are interested in the sector because they see the opportunity, and also some of their growth rates maybe are plateauing, et cetera. But the problem is there's a lot of nuance to a lot of these molecules. I mentioned they're scheduled, et cetera. And so we were thinking, how do we crack this nut? How do we kind of help these companies, realize or monetize products using all these natural compounds? Because I mentioned you have cannabinoids, flavonoids, terpenoids, alkaloids, phenolics, polyphenolics, all this stuff. And I'm using my biochemistry background to kind of look into that and do that. And so we founded over 6 months ago a firm called Skunkworks Nature, and it's a reference to the Lockheed plant in Palmdale, California, which invented a lot of innovative plants. And they're also, as a result of the Lockheed plant, they have Skunkworks, as many people know, is synonymous with secret innovation. So I thought, I was like, well, wow, well, let's start a company called Skunkworks Nature. And then we realized, well, we've been using AI for 3 years. AI could be very valuable to what we're trying to do to help these companies explore the molecular space and the opportunities, whether it is wellness, whether it's beverage. A lot of people know about all the stuff going on with hemp beverage. You have psilocybin being put into gummies, and you have all kinds of stuff. Now, some of it's legal, maybe some of it's not, some of it's black market, some of it's gray market, some of it's not. And that's what we're trying to do, is go at this with a very strong reputation, strong data, great information, and certainly AI can play a role in that.
Yeah. So, how is that helping kind of to bridge the gap on under researched molecules?
Well, I mean, for one thing, many people may know that the government came out recently and said, hey, all this stuff with these hemp beverages is bad news. You're selling this into grocery stores and convenience stores, which, I can agree with that. When you have low barriers to entry for certain things, even certain drugs, et cetera, it can lead to bad things. So certainly I think some regulation is needed. But the other thing that I know, having worked in the FDA with my biotech career and also the SEC with finance, that regulatory people, and unfortunately you're seeing it with crypto and Bitcoin, right? The SEC is behind the curve. And unfortunately, that's typically true. But the other thing is with like AI, if you have people that are ahead of the curve, but are doing it right, and I saw this with biotech, right? There's a lot of biotechnology, Cas-base and CRISPR, this amazing technologies that recently came to fore that could be really misused. But we need to make sure that we have people that are using it correctly. And what we're trying to do is apply AI to look and find molecules that have not been really evaluated much, that could be strong substitutes for something like D9 that's, frankly overregulated. So I think that's one, just exhibit A of how we'd like to maybe use AI. Does that answer your question?
Sure. Yeah. Well enough. Thanks. So to zoom out, you kind of referenced systems and your exposure at Santa Fe Institute, kind of being the driver or I guess the launching pad for where you are today. How did that shape how you think today about AI, good, bad, or indifferent? And I welcome any kind of
Yeah,
criticism on AI that you could provide.
sure. Well, I mean, one of the things that interesting that I was always being kind of biochem guy, right? And then something that you guys may remember, I think it was James Gleick wrote the book Chaos. So there's, study of complexity theory came to fore in the 80s and 90s, maybe it's starting in the 70s. And the idea that you have these complex systems, whether they're economics or they're even like Nile River flows, big natural phenomena. It's a famous saying is, you have a butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil and it changes the weather in another part of the world. And so that's what the Santa Fe Institute was kind of started. And I don't know really when it was founded, but I was studying and talking to those people. Ori Gelman's one of the famous people, he's a physicist who was down there. Uh, Brian Arthur, a big economist, was part of that. And the idea is to try to apply, disparate different concepts or disciplines like biology and physics and astrophysics and chemistry and economics to these really crazy complex systems and see if there's a way that you can find patterns and ways to break it down. And really, complexity theory, what says is that you systems bounce between total order and total chaos, and they weave this path in between those. And that's kind of why a long-winded explanation that Santa Fe Institute was one of the first groups really doing a lot of stuff with genetic algorithms. Obviously, Alan Turing was one of the first people to really push the envelope on AI and computers and thinking computers, right? And genetic algorithms, Santa Fe Institute was actually doing these genetic algorithms that would actually learn by themselves, right? And by studying that, the one thing that's been interesting to me is that stuff was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And as you know, Alan Turing was in the 50s. I mean, this stuff takes a while to evolve. But again, I think that the bad thing about it too is that if it's put in the wrong hands, as I mentioned, and the other thing is too that I think people lean on technology too much, right? I mean, like I was just as unfortunate. I think everybody knows. Yesterday was the 40th anniversary of the Challenger disaster, and, that's one thing that one of the astronauts was talking about is that every 18 to 20 years, NASA would get complacent. They had the Apollo 1 fire with Gus Grissom, and that was about 16, 17 years before 1986, the Challenger. And then, you had about 14 or 15 years later, and you had Columbia. I guess that was 17 years later, right? So I think, they're all tragic events. And I think one problem is that people get complacent with technology, and you can't do that.
Yep. So to piggyback off of that, are you giving any kind of advice, or if you were to give firms advice on training their teams to work with AI without allowing it to be a crutch, what sort of advice would you give?
Well, I mean, one of the things too that uh, I think is interesting right now is that we don't know what's how to apply this technology. I mean, a lot of people are charging forward with this, right? But I think one of the things is step back. And I think one of the things that I mentioned to you that is interesting about this is a lot of the college students, the professors are being, at least from what I've seen, are being very careful about how students apply AI because they think that they can use it to cheat, plagiarize, shortcut, which no doubt, again, there's, problems with technology, but I think there's definitely powerful ways to do it too. And that's what I've been trying to talk to my daughters about who are in college age or just out of college, to the fact that, if you're young, again, look at, all bad thing or, difficult things provide opportunities, right? And I think that that's one of the things that I'm trying to talk to people right now, and certainly my daughters, is, one of the big concepts that everybody's talking about. We started off with this whole concept, this conversation, which I think is a good way to close it out, is the fact that everybody's, what Amazon mentioned, 16,000 layoffs yesterday or this week. Most of people are assuming that that's due to AI. So everybody's kind of very sensitive to the fact that it sounds like AI is going to have a lot of job destruction, and I think, unfortunately, it will. But then I think with that, there's an opportunity with people that are on the forefront say, "Hey, there's, what I'm trying to do with my daughters, and we're having work in my firm is we're trying to develop SOPs, right? Like AI SOPs. How is a way to develop this so you have consistent ways to go about using these tools, defining which tools, whether it's Claude, right? Whether it's perpetuity, whether it's a number of these different chat GPT, whatever, making decks, making whatever, but having an underpinning way to do it because it's kind of like, if you remember SAP, again, technology, right? And everybody assumed, okay, well, let's just adapt it into our company and everything will be hunky dory and everything's going to be efficient. It turned out that was not the case. The problem is SAP, evolution and adoption and implementation was based a lot on culture. And if you didn't have the right culture, you can adopt the technology. It still is not going to work, right? So that's one thing I want people to really realize is that culture is an important a part of technology adoption, right?
Well said. Excellent. That's a great way to wrap it. So, David, I really appreciate the conversation and your insights. If folks want to get to know more about your firm and as well, you've got a podcast of your own, right? Where can they find you?
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, you can look us up on, I have a LinkedIn page, certainly reference both Skunkworks, Nature AI, and Golden Eagle Partners. We are just in the process of putting up a website for Skunkworks, Nature AI. That's in development. We certainly have a website on Golden Eagle Partners. And yeah, we do have, we've had webinars over the last year and a half with leading people in cannabis and psychedelics from around the world. And those are all referenced and have recordings on LinkedIn if you want to listen to some of those. I'm sure you can find those out there. But yeah, it's been a great conversation, Colin. Thanks for the time.
You're very welcome. We'll leave those links down below in the subscription. So, David, thank you for your time. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.
Sounds great. Thanks.